Average agents are not struggling because the market is bad. They're struggling because the market stopped rewarding the bad behavior that most agents got during COVID. This market does not need more agents. It just needs better ones. And today, Sharif and I are going to be talking about this and how good agents are succeeding in this business, in this market today, even though it is one of the hardest markets in the last 30 years. Good morning, Sharif. How you doing today?
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Good, good. I know 71% of agents closed zero deals last year. And I think the other 20% of those probably averaged somewhere between what, like 4 to 10 deals or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of agents out there that are not doing anything. And, it's kind of crazy. It only takes you 72 hours, right, to get your real estate license, and it shows. And really the gap between like the average and professional agent is widening so much faster than it was before. It's not because of luck and it's not because of rates, despite what people really think, right? It's because of skill, discipline, and systems. And that all matters more than ever. And really, it's you're right. Our agents, workforce got spoiled during COVID. Things were easy. Almost anyone can put a deal together, but now it takes a little bit more than that. So the market's not really getting more difficult. It's just, you just need more skill now. You need more commitment, and you really need systems in place. Don't you agree, Pete?
No, 100%. I think most agents that are struggling, they struggle because they don't have a proper system in place. And there's so many systems that we can talk about and dive into. And it's not just about a CRM system, it's about a schedule system, a follow up system, a prospecting system overall. And we'll talk a lot about that. And most people are just going into this business winging it, thinking that they can produce what, like six figures right off the bat, and
Yeah.
they barely took two weeks worth of school.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's really what it comes down to is, you got to control your schedule. That's the first thing, right? Like the average agent may be doing busy work, but it's not really productive work. You may feel like you're busy all day, but in reality, you're having fewer conversations. I know that we implemented, a minimum of 10 conversations with a goal of 20 conversations per day, because that's what really makes the needle move, right? It's the amount of people you talk to. So you could be doing busy work, putting your CMAs together, or trying to figure out what email template is the best for you, or, for figuring out which social posts you're trying to post today. That all seems busy work, but in reality, you need to have more conversations. That's really what you need to do. This business is a contact business, and you just have to contact more people. And to predict your income, you can do that by the amount of conversations that you have. So I think that's the core of it all. It's not all work is actual work that's productive. And that's what people are confusing it with.
I think it's more of a hard mindset shift from working a 9 to 5 to working into, an independent contractor, where most people think more about hours worked from certain times, and they confuse what hours worked, what productive hour work really mean. They think just because they show up in the office from 9 to 5 that they put in the work, but they could be here like scrolling down on social media all day, or scrolling on the MLS, or like you said, doing stuff that is not really moving the needle in their business. So that's going to be the number one thing is like, most agents again confuse the activity with progress, and they're just pretending to be busy all day, but it's not getting them anywhere.
Not at all. I mean, really, you gotta do more right now. And you have to, the thing is, we don't get paid hourly. That's what's crazy about this whole thing. It's like, the amount of hours that you put in doesn't really count towards like your paycheck, right? It's the amount of progress, just like you said, Peter. And in order to figure out how much progress, you're actually making, you got to track it. And the key is like what we do like every day is track appointments. We're tracking conversations, actual calls made, actual contracts put together. And that's the productive activities. And really, what you got to do is concentrate on doing productive activities and making sure that you have accomplishments in the day. So you could work all day and not book an appointment, and that might not have been a productive day for you, right? But at least you're putting some calls out there so that you're planting seeds. So really it's about the compounded interest of the actual tasks that you're doing on a daily basis that equals the success of a productive agent. So it's not really, the other stuff. I have people that that we're recently coaching. And the first thing I tell them is take the calls off yourself, right? Because the calls that people are, basically calling you all day for those simple questions that an admin can answer is actually taking up a lot of your time. And taking up a lot of your time, you think that you're being productive, but in reality, you're not prospecting, you're not following up, and you're not bringing in additional business and keeping your pipeline full. So you're doing like the third party things that are more admin tasks because in reality, if you don't have an admin, you are the admin. So you're doing those $20 an hour activities when you should be concentrating on $200.
Agreed. Agreed. It's really important. Delegation is extremely important, and this is something that I've learned early on when me and you started, our friendship and mentorship back. When was it? Like 2020 or so, something like that. It was one of the things that you like kind of beat into my head early on. I do get it, and it's sometimes it's hard, right? Like for me or some people that are control freaks, they just want to make sure that everything gets done their way. I'll be honest, I'm still that way in certain things because I just want things done fast and I can't wait sometimes for a VA to get it done. So I'll just go ahead and do it. Uh, you know, as time goes by, like I'm getting used to letting go of certain things, but that's the only way to scale in this business, right?
No, it's true. I mean, that's the basis of it, right? You want to scale and you want to leverage. And that's really the only way you're going to leverage is by delegating and just putting responsibilities in someone else's plate, right? And you had to let go of that whole, it's going to be, I'm going to micromanage and make this a perfect organization. Because in reality, then the organization can't run without you and it can't scale. So that's really what people have to start thinking about is if you want to take this to the next level and actually be productive, you got to do the money making activities and try to take the other ones and kind of, put them onto an admin task type of list for someone else to take care of for you. But that's not all, right? I'm finding a lot that, as agents get less busier, it's almost like they get more commission breath and they get a little bit more desperate and they're not having those hard conversations with their clients as well. They're kind of avoiding it just to get the deal, right? And it's not doing anyone any good. It's not doing you any good. It's not doing your client any good. And what you got to understand as well is overpricing to win the listing is not going to benefit you, right? Although it's better off to have a sign in the yard rather than a sign in the car, that overpriced listing is gonna not give you the results or your client the results that they wanted. So we got to have those conversations with our clients and let them know exactly what the market is reflecting at this point and be willing to say, no, we can't overprice your property because we want to set you up for success. Right. And we want to try to net you the most for your money. And that doesn't really is not a result directly of overpricing your property. It's by pricing your property correctly. Now, it's just a tidbit, right? Just talking with sellers. But also, I find that buyer's agents are also avoiding talking about the buyer fee in their conversations. And they should be having those buyer consultations with their buyers and explaining their services, explaining their value and how they're charging such fees, right? And you can't just wait and just think that the problem's going to fix itself. These are really hard conversations you got to have with people now more than ever.
Agreed. I think people that do overprice their listing just to get it, I think it's just more of an ego boost more than anything. Just to, kind of pump their chest and say, "Oh, I just got a listing and, look at me," and type of deal. But you said it perfectly. It's just like, this is not going to end up causing you to actually make any money, but it's actually going to cost you money. And it could cost you business, future business as well, because now you told the seller that you can sell it for a price just because you don't want to have a confrontational conversation, and it's not doing you any good and it's not doing the seller any good. And more than anything, too, is just having those price adjustment conversations too. Most people avoid it. They run away from it because they're afraid of having these hard conversations with the seller. They're afraid of the seller telling them, "Hey, we're gonna take the listing off the market." But the reality is, like you mentioned, it's like you're not really winning anything by just having a listing sit there all day and it's not moving, right? So our job at the end of the day is to make sure that we move the listing to a closing and not just let it sit there all day just to say that we have a listing on the market. It's just more of I think it's more of a liability than anything. It's not really an investment in anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to these agents all the time that have overpriced listings, and they they tell me they hope it sells. And to be honest, hope is not a strategy, right? And definitely not in this type of a market. You can't just hope. This isn't one of those. We're not in COVID. You can't just hope it's going to sell, right? You got to actually lead with the truth and use data, even when it's an uncomfortable conversation with your clients. And that's really what we tend to do is, well, I totally understand that you want to price your property at this, amount, but here is what everything's selling for in your area. Got to show them the data, what backs up, what your decisions are or what your advice is on pricing a property, even if that means you're going to lose that listing, right? Because it's just like you said, Peter, like you're going to end up putting a lot of work into it. You're going to invest time and money into this listing that is not going to bring you any type of results. So you really want to make sure that you have those uncomfortable conversations, especially dealing with pricing, and just go back to the data, right? That's really what sets you apart from being, an average agent and a professional agent is taking the actual, what's happening in the market and bring it to your client so they understand and can make the decisions, correctly.
Yeah, no, so good. Does everything. Data doesn't lie and numbers don't lie. So that's when somebody's talking to you about not wanting to adjust their price, just make sure that you have the proper reports and not just sold comps. It's like, how many other homes are in the market right now that would be considered a competitor to their listing,
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
So important.
It's so, so important, and you know what's even more important? Like, understanding that you're not gonna get, like, quick deals right now. It's gonna be a lot of nurturing going on. It's not saying that you're not gonna get a call, all of a sudden somebody wants to put their home on the market or actually put an offer on a house that you didn't even show them yet, right? Those things will happen, but weak follow-up is exposed in a skilled market like we're in right now. And you got to be consistent with when you're checking in with clients. I mean, the majority of the listings that I put on the market are not people that call in within like the first couple of months of me like actually putting it on the market, right? These are years and years of follow up. Like I just reviewed this with like our team yesterday during our team meeting. When you're prospecting, say in a pond, you call a lead and they tell you that, oh, sorry, I already bought a house. The majority of the time, the average agent is telling them, "Oh, great. I'm glad you bought a house. Sorry we couldn't help you," and then click. But in reality, just because that person bought a house without you doesn't mean they won't work with you in the future. So that for me, when someone tells me that, I'm like, oh, wow, this is a listing lead in its infancy, right? I might be working this for less than a year, or I might be working this for 5 to 7 years, right? But in reality, that's a listing lead now. So what's the correct, response to that is what I brought up to my team is, wow, that's amazing. Congratulations on buying your property. That's the awesome feeling. Now, if you're anything like me, would you want to be abreast of your value on a monthly or biweekly basis? And now you're turning that into a listing lead. You're providing them value for their property, even though they bought without you. Because we all know about 80 to 85% of all agents are forgotten after the transaction because of the lack of follow up, just again, right there. So, follow up in itself is where the gold is at in real estate, right? And if you don't have any systems, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually be organized within your follow up. And you don't want to have long gaps in communication. That's why, ultimately, why we recommend you're speaking to hot leads once a week, you're speaking to your nurture leads once a month, and then your past clients, sphere, and friends and family, you're speaking to minimally on a quarterly basis. There's a reason for all that, right? Because follow up is where the gold is.
So true. I love that you said that too. It's so important. Most people get offended if somebody bought without them, especially if they knew them. But it's like you said, it's a seller lead. It's a future seller lead, and most people just don't know how to handle these conversations. And I think overall, there's multiple ways we can work with a client. Even if they bought something, they could be also, hey, I'm not sure like how much money you have saved or something like, I'm not sure if you've ever thought of investing into real estate. Have you had any thought of adding more investment properties to your portfolio? If they already bought, like maybe they're interested in buying another investment property also, right? So it's not just taking this no and just hanging up, like you said, but like, hey, uh, exactly. I love that script that you said. If, would you be opposed of getting a home value or something of that sort? Or, hey, have you had any thought about investing into investment properties? Or, hey, do you know anyone else that's looking to buy or sell in the near future? And sometimes we won't get if we don't ask. And it's just learning how to ask the proper questions, even when you get a no, because I think there's always a sale to be made in every phone call or conversation. It might not be now, but it might be in the future.
Yeah,
And
it may not even be that person, Peter. I
yeah,
mean, I've had it where, I've used that follow-up script and then that person's referring me to their neighbor or their friend or family only because now I'm providing them value that that agent that actually helped them in a transaction is not. So that's what it is. It's lead with value, right? And even though they didn't transact with you, doesn't mean that you can't actually have a relationship with that person. And that's the confusion that I talk about all the time. Everyone thinks this business is about selling homes, but it's not. It's who knows the most people wins, right? We want to develop those relationships at a deeper and higher level as well. And that's when you start to get business out of nowhere, right? It starts rolling in. And that just compounds year after year with the amount of people that you speak to.
yeah. And everybody wants now business, right? And it's the immediate gratification curse that this world and this recent world has taught us all, right? And I told this to my team last week, and I was like, look, imagine that you're a farmer, and typically a good farmer has a field that is divided into four. One field where they plow and take the weeds out, and the other field where they plant the seeds. The other field will be they water those seeds, and then the last field, the fourth field, would be the one that they harvest, right? But it takes some time before they get to that fourth field to harvest whatever that they planted and took care of and watered and all of that stuff. But everybody just wants to go straight to the harvest. Nobody wants to do any of the other three fields because they just want to go straight into the last part. And I was like, you got to stop thinking that way because you're going to lose big time. And that's the problem most people end up getting with. And that's why a lot of people are not productive or don't close as much because they're just so fixated on how can I get a closing right now? And it doesn't work.
It's true, and even in a transaction, they're being weak with, the negotiation parts of it, which I feel I don't know, man, like, negotiations are getting worse and worse. So, really, it's I've seen it all the time, and agents are panicking during, the actual offer process. They're not stepping up for their clients. They're not being logical about the negotiations. They're panicking during inspections. Concessions are given way too early and deals are dying quietly. And really, in this market, like negotiation matters more than ever, right? How you represent your client it really matters more than ever. And negotiation doesn't start with, the actual offer. It starts way prior to that. It's building rapport with the other side. I'm getting offers and people aren't even calling me to tell me they submitted an offer. Like how you represent your client and beginning negotiations on a good foot, right? It's odd to me now. I mean, transaction counts are going down, right? But the amount of agents are still the same at this point. So you got to do more. So that's what it is you just got to put in more now and having again those tough conversations.
Yeah, no, it's so good. The thing with negotiation, and it just ties into what you just said, it has to be a win-win for both parties. It's not like, oh, I got one on you, right? So that's the number one thing that you have to put in your head when you are going into some sort of negotiation. And it starts with having that conversation with the listing agent and attempt every way. I mean, I know Sharif is hard to reach, and so am I sometimes. And just like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, is that we're trying to delegate some of the not so important questions and conversations to an admin that they can reach to. But trust me, if you really try to get a hold of us, you will get find a way to get a hold of us, or tell our admin like, "Hey, we really need to speak to Sharif, Peter. It's about a deal that we want to talk about. We want to have an offer presented and things of that nature," right? So you will find a way. But at the end of the day, it's like, how does it a win-win? How can we make sure that both parties are happy? How do we make sure that we're on the same team here? And I just literally had this conversation with a deal that I have here in Watchung with an agent. And it's like, I'm like, look, man, like we're on the same team here. We both want to get the deal done and we want the best for our clients. But your strategy doesn't make sense. He's telling me I have a friend that is an appraisal that told me that my this house is worth this much. I'm like, your friend never went to the house. And anyway, you know that appraisers pricing does not mean anything. The price is whatever the buyer is willing to pay. And this is exactly where we're at. I'm like, look at the comps. I sent him the comps and I'm like, let's come up with a price. The seller invested X amount into the home and they want to take this much home. Right. So we went back and forth and we finally, after a week of negotiation, we finally came with a price where both parties are happy. And it started over like 100,000 less where his original offer was. Right. So it's really making sure that you don't get defensive, make sure that it's a win-win, and position it that you both are on the same team, the buyer's agent and the listing agent, because we're at the end of the day, if we're not on the same team, this deal is not going to work, and it's definitely going to fall.
No, it's so good. I mean, technically, we're all coworkers, right? And we have to figure out a way that we both can come to a meeting of minds to benefit both clients involved in a transaction. And really, it's about also understanding what your value is. That's like a big part of the negotiation as well. Is what is your value to your client? And I feel like agents also aren't explaining their value to their clients correctly, and it comes down to being confident. That's like one of the biggest things, is like understanding the industry but also being confident, right? And you have to understand that consumers are more cautious and more selective now than ever, so explaining your value is more important, and really understanding what your value propositions are. And what's happening is, we're giving free advice without any commitments, and you really got to build on those commitments with your clients, because that's how you actually build the transaction out. And really explaining your value, not only in a listing presentation, not only in a buyer consultation, but really throughout those constant conversations that you're having with a client, nurturing them through the transaction is important as well. And that's what, sometimes you feel like you have to prove yourself, but in reality, that's what you have to do. You have to show the person that you're representing them correctly. And this is the reasons why. This is what I know about the market. This is what I see. Just like you had mentioned before, Peter, the numbers don't lie. This is what I'm bringing you so that you can make those correct, decisions.
For sure. I mean, and value also ties back into follow up. A lot of times people just call when they are following up with their leads and just saying, "Hey, I'm calling to check in," or "I'm calling just to follow up." And if you are doing that, you're going to be losing a lot of business because you should be adding something of value to your client every time you follow up. And it could be something basic. And I'm not saying to give all your value away, but it could be a news insight that you've heard about recently, or it could be a market update about their area that they live in, if the home prices are up or down, how many active listings, how many sold listings. But come up with something of value that can actually help and benefit them, because this is how they remember you. And if you are the person that's always providing value, you're definitely going to be remembered most than all the other agents that are being called. Because if you're calling like everybody else is going to call, "Hey, I'm just following up," versus you saying, I'm literally adding value here. How can I help? I think this is important. I was just thinking of you when I saw this piece of news, when I saw this market update, when I saw this home sold or go on the market, I thought of you. How are things going? Did you know that this home went on the market, right? But always find a way to add value and always give before you receive. And that's what most people also don't do, right? Is that they're so fixated on taken away before they provide any value. And it's like this whole thing with like, "Are you pre-approved yet?" That's the first thing that most agents will say to a buyer that they speak with on the phone. And I'm like, no, add value, meet with them face to face, at least spend some time with them, educate them on the market. And then from there, you can maybe ask them and getting them pre-approved. That just is crazy to me.
No, totally, totally. I mean, I try like telling, our team as well, going back and saying, "Hey, I'm just following up," is really just like you said, Peter. It's like what everyone else does. You're better off. Exactly what you said is bringing value. Like, "Hey, I know you're shopping for a home. This property just came on the market and reminded me of you. Did you want to take a look at it, or did you want any additional information on it?" Or, "Hey, I know you're thinking about selling your home. This home just sold in your market. Do you want to know how that affected your home value?" Right? These are better follow-up lines than, "Hey, are you ready? Hey, I'm just following up," things of that nature, because you're bringing something of value. And you know what else separates, the average agent from the high performing one is that the average agent, they're more emotional instead of systematic, right? And when we're saying value, we're not saying, hey, reacting to a headline and, being all crazy about it and then bringing to your client and really being inconsistent about your routines and things of that nature, because it hurts now more than ever, right? And uncertainty magnifies emotional decision making. Feeling uncertain is only going to make the person in front of you uncertain as well. So you really don't want to, mix emotions, reacting to headlines, having mood driven decisions or inconsistent routines, because that throws it all out of whack. You want to be more systematic than you are emotional when you're in this business. Emotions, they really can screw up everything. Your actual relationships with your clients, the transactions themselves. And if you're more systematic about it, you have better control over the situations.
Yeah, no, it's everything. I think, emotional intelligence and psychology, I think, is like 80% of this business. And because it is a tough business, you're dealing with a lot of people, and it's hard to regulate that, especially if you have, you're on a roller coaster of deals getting accepted, deals falling apart, clients working with you, clients not working with you. It can definitely mess with you, but you have to be very strong when it comes to these things, because you got to know that you can only control so much of it. But then also, if something doesn't go your way, or you fail at a deal, or a client takes a listing back from you or cancels an agreement, you gotta look first inside. How did I cause this? How can I prevent it from happening? And how can I make sure that I can learn something from this, right? And not to repeat it again. But that's what emotional intelligence is overall, and emotionally regulate your emotions is, take a pause, breathe, like figure out what caused it, and recognize what triggers these emotions. Like, you got to be self-aware. That's the most important part of this whole thing: self-awareness, and recognizing and learning, so it doesn't happen again. And it's not going to be overnight. It will take maybe years before you start getting this better and better at it all the time. So just be cautious of it, and just be self-aware of how things are, and don't be the one that has the victim mindset and blaming everything outside of you that caused all these things, because this is how you will 100% fail.
No, it's so true. I mean, be systematic, control your emotions, and understand this is a business, right? You're the professional in this business. And people are depending on you to be that professional as well. But in order to actually be a high performing agent, not the average, and be that professional, you also always got to be learning, right? Like, I'm always going to masterminds. I'm always like trying to educate myself and reading on different things that are coming up in our market. The average agent thinks they know everything, right? And they don't need any more training. They don't need to sharpen their skills. And they're using the same scripts from like 5 years ago when things are just evolving now, right? And that's something that's critical right now, is understanding different things that will help you. I'm still learning, right? Even as high of a producer that we both are, Peter, we're still always trying to learn something new, right? And the average agent doesn't do that. They really think that they know everything, and they're not curious. They're not trying to educate themselves and be better at something. So that is something essential too. If you really want to excel, you got to start, learning at a high level. I can tell you, even just with our team, we have a book club. I mean, we read a different book every few weeks and review it on a weekly basis on Fridays during our morning huddle because we want to actually get an upper hand. And this is something that we actually brought up together. The average agent, the normal agent, is actually the one that knows the least, right? Knowing more in this business makes you the abnormal agent at this point. And let us all be abnormal together at that because we should be educating ourselves. We should be growing ourselves and you should be learning at any given point. And it's really something that you should have in a daily activity for yourself is just building your knowledge of the industry.
So good. And I love this topic because that's how I got into real estate because I had so much of a lag time in my commute when I was working my other job, my 9 to 5, and I had an hour and 40-minute commute. So all I did was listen to audiobooks, read books, and listen to podcasts. And this is how I ended up expanding my knowledge overall, and not in just real estate, but just more of, personal development overall. And what I learned over the years is that, ignorance is the most expensive bill that you will ever have. And it's not the cost of coaching or it's not the cost of being on a team, it's the ignorance. Like, I rather pay a lot more money to learn quicker than not know what I'm supposed to know and spend more years trying to figure it out and fail on my own expense. I rather pay that cost up front and not have to wait years to figure it all out. And most people don't think that way. I look at it as an investment. And I think, again, like, ignorance is too expensive for us not to invest in ourselves. And it doesn't even have to be that much of an expense. It's just about making it a priority and not let ego get in the way, like you said, Sharif, by saying, oh, I know everything. I don't need to go to more trainings. I learned something from every training that I go on. I learned something from you on a podcast every time. Like, just by having these conversations, it's like, you do something differently with the team that maybe we need to implement and vice versa. Like, you always got to be a lifelong learner. And most people don't think that way. And it just kills me.
It does. And you got to really put your pride aside in order to grow, right? And always be educating yourself. And we're not saying average agents are bad people. They're just really unprepared for this version of the market today, right? You may have entered the market back during the COVID time and it was a lot easier. So you're just not prepared. And it's not about being, a bad person, right? You're just going to educate yourself. You're going to have systems in place. And really, you just have to just dive into the business and be consistent with it. And if you're feeling like you're stuck and you're listening to this podcast, the one skill that you need to commit to is mastering something in the next 30 days, right? I don't care what it is, but pick something. Pick a pillar that you're going to master and you know that that's going to change everything for you. Like if you enjoy, sitting open houses, I want you to pick that pillar and master it, right? If you enjoy door knocking, I want you to pick that and master it. That's what it's about. It's about mastering certain things and then expanding on it. So if you do feel stuck, you really just got to pick a skill and just go all in on it. Educate yourself on it. Be systematic about it and really just go full force and then pick up a different one after you've mastered.
So good. Well, guys, if you do like this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you do share it, like it, and comment on it. So this way we know that this is valuable to you and we can do more of this. And we will also post a link to our Facebook groups so you can follow. We do always post some valuable content in there. And stay tuned to the next podcast. Sharif and I are always doing this on a weekly basis, but we'd love to hear what topics you want us to talk about. So this way we kind of make these topics more towards you and what it is that you want to learn. So let us know in the comments. What is it that you would love to learn? And maybe it's something that we've experienced before that can help you in your business. And you can always feel free to reach out to us via social media or text or email, just so we know that you are getting value from this podcast. Thank you, guys.